Oh, you want to play psycho killer? Can I be the helpless victim?
Cross your eyes and scream, man. Scream for your life.
Welcome. I'm your Scream Queen, Jenica Olin. This is my 14th episode, and my theme for February is Till Death Do Us Part, with some love stories worth dying for. If you're new here, each episode will have an intro, brief synopsis of the movie, an analysis of the film, and then I get into the true crime of it all. I'm a huge true crime fan, and I like to make connections between the true horrors that inspire our darkest imaginations. The truth is, the stuff on screen is way tamer than the true horrors that take place every day. Spoiler alert, I've made it my job to spoil the shit out of this movie. So if you don't want it spoiled, stop here, watch it, come back. Today, I will be covering Bride of Reanimator, which is a parody of Bride of Frankenstein, directed by Brian Yuzna, with writers Zeph Daniels, Rick Fry, and of course, H.P. Lovecraft. Starring Jeffrey Combs as Dr. West, Bruce Abbott as Dan, Claude Earl Jones as Lieutenant Chapman, Fabiana Udino as Francesca, Kathleen Kinmont as our bride/Gloria, and David Gale as Dr. Hill. Some quick trivia about this film. The liquid used for the reagent in this film is actually the liquid from glow sticks. So don't drink this, don't inject it, just keep it in the glow stick, please, and let it do its job because it is extremely toxic. One of the original plots of the film involved Dan Cain being recruited to Washington, D.C. to bring the deceased president of the United States back to life with the help of Herbert West. This was later carried over to the unmade House of Reanimator. So hopefully we have that in our future at some point. At one point, Dr. West suggests that the noises coming from his laboratory wall are just probably rats in the wall. This is a reference to one of H.P. Lovecraft's better-known stories, Rats in the Wall. Barbara Crampton, star of the first Reanimator, 1985, turned down the role of the bride on advice of her agent, who convinced her that it was beneath her to have such a small role. Kathleen Kinmont was cast instead. She and Crampton had worked together in a nude scene in Fraternity Vacation 1985. Kathleen Kinmont said her bride makeup took 6.5 hours to put on and 2 hours to take off. The makeup team used a greasy special agent called Detach Air, which would lift everything off her body, and she said it really hurt. Kathleen had to have 15 different body casts made for her monster makeup and costume. During the application of a body cast, male makeup effects artists covered her nude body in liquid latex. At first, it was cold, but it started to heat up as it got harder. It soon became so hot, she fainted. Let's set the scene with a synopsis of the movie.
Herbert West is not just your ordinary doctor.
Others dare not dream what we are about to do.
He intends to make medical history.
This is no longer about just reanimating the dead.
With the help of Daniel Cain.
It's never gonna work. She's gonna be uncontrollably spastic.
And a few select friends.
West took my body, but he cannot take my mind.
He's about to bring his dream to life.
And God created woman.
8 months after the events of Reanimator, doctors Herbert West and Dan Cain are working as medics in the middle of a bloody Peruvian civil war. In the chaos of battle, and with plenty of casualties to work on, they're free to experiment with West's reanimation reagent. When their medical tent is stormed by the enemy troops, West and Cain return home to Arkham, Massachusetts. There, they resume their former jobs as doctors at Miskatonic University Hospital, and West returns to the basement laboratory of Cain's house to continue his research. Using parts pilfered from both the hospital's morgue and from a cemetery located next door, West discovers that his reagent can reanimate body parts by themselves.
This is the key
to creating life, parts, reanimated parts.
We're trying to save whole people, not parts.
Exactly. And what are people, Dan, over and above a collection of living parts?
He becomes determined to create an entire living person with various body parts. Wes discovers the heart of Megan Halsey, Cain's fiancée, in the hospital morgue and takes it to use her heart to create life using women's body parts. Also stored in the morgue is the rest of the evidence from the Miskatonic Massacre. Inside, pathologist Dr. Wilbur Graves discovers a vial of West's reagent. Lieutenant Leslie Chapman brought back the head of Dr. Hill. He found the head at a circus sideshow, and he is investigating West and Cain with their connection to the Miskatonic Massacre. Dr. Graves is curious after talking to Lieutenant Chapman, and he reanimates Hill's head using the reagent he found.
Creationism with the origin of disease. Totally idiotic.
Chapman suspects that West and Cain are responsible for the people walking around that have death certificates. At their house, West demonstrates his ability to bring back individual body parts and convinces Dan to help him make a woman using Meg's heart. As Dan is leaving the hospital, he runs into Francesca, and she offers to make him dinner that night. They knew each other from the war zone in Peru. She comes by that night to cook dinner and brings her dog. That night, Chapman stops by the house to question them. He discovers West's corpse-filled lab, and the two get into a confrontation. A fight ensues, and West kills Chapman by using a cloth treated with a chemical that causes cardiac arrest when inhaled.
What happened? He attacked me. No, Dad! Dad, I can't help it if his heart gave out! God, Herbert, he's a cop!
West then reanimates the police officer with the intention of covering up his crime. Chapman barges out of the house in a rampage, killing Francesca's dog on the way out. When one of Cain's patients, Gloria, dies, West collects the last piece he needs for his creation, her head. With a complete body stitched and wired together, West and Cain inject the reanimation reagent into Meg's heart. While waiting for the reagent to take effect, a package is delivered to their house. West retrieves and opens it. From inside, Hill's winged head flies out. At the same time, Francesca comes to the house to check on Dan when she's attacked by reanimated corpses. When she makes it into the house, she yells that, "They're coming!"
Daniel!
She's alive.
They're coming!
Now!
The zombies Hill controls break into the house and they retreat back into the basement lab. Francesca asks Dan who she is, and he replies, "It's Meg." When she says, "But Meg is dead," he breaks out of his delusion and realizes the bride is not Meg.
Not Meg.
A cat fight breaks out between the bride and Cain's girlfriend, Francesca.
Your girlfriend doesn't stand a chance.
Cain rejects the bride's love, saying he doesn't want her body. Heartbroken, the bride rips Megan's heart out of her own chest and then falls to pieces. West diagnoses this as tissue rejection.
Tissue rejection!
Hill and his zombies force West, Cain, and Francesca to retreat through the wall of the lab into a crypt in a neighboring cemetery. Inside, all of West's prior test subjects arise and make their way toward him, stopping only when Herbert commands them to. The unstable crypt begins to collapse, trapping Hill, West, and the zombies.
It's over, West.
Cain and Francesca escape the debris and crawl their way to the surface of the cemetery together. Hill is stuck in the debris, while Megan's heart, still in the hand of the bride, stops beating. Now it's time to talk horror, and my guest today is Aid from Slashers Podcast. So Aid, is there anything you want to tell the audience about what you're working on?
Oh, okay. So I am a co-host of Slashers Podcast with Mikey and Lance. So if you'd like to give us a follow, you can follow us on Instagram at SlashersPod. Check out our link tree there and give us a follow if you'd like to give our page a follow. And we also have another page called Mutant Goons from Beyond, where we just kind of share a lot of, off the wall kinds of things that we're into. But yeah, right now, so that's really my only project as of now. We were filming a short, or we were filming a short in LA over last February. So I guess the anniversary, 1 year anniversary is coming up. Noelia with Mikey and his production crew, and that is on hold for now. But if you'd like to see me in anything, Doug has filmed a cinematic masterpiece titled Trash Juice that you can stream on Tubi. So go ahead and give that a follow if you want as well. So, but yeah, that's about it. We talk all things horror media, anything from films, books, video games. The guys do a YouTube special called The Comic Chop. And I'm not saying I don't like comic books, but I don't like comic books. So the boys do that. And that's a YouTube exclusive. So if you follow us on YouTube, you can check that out. And we do that with our buddy Joe over at Much Ado About Nerding. So I know I just plugged a lot of things, but please feel free to give us a follow.
No, you guys are very busy. You guys do a lot, and you guys are really awesome at what you do. And and you guys have some really in-depth knowledge on the different movies and like the directors, the actors, actresses, all of that. All right, so we are talking about Bride of Reanimator. And last week I did Bride of Frankenstein. So I'm kind of like using those two for comparison. And I like sent you the notes, and I have it kind of broken down into themes. The first theme that I have on my list is creationism versus evolution. I really love Wes, just like very altruistic outlook on life. I think he's a really funny character in that regard. And he has some of the best quotes. Like when he says, so whenever Francesca is like, this is blasphemy, he says, blasphemy to who? Your God? And he goes through this whole thing about how miserable humanity is, and how God doesn't even like what he's created and all this stuff. And I thought it was a really good piece of dialogue. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I think that, well, West is, so Jeffrey Combs playing him, I think it really adds to the character.
Yeah.
Because yes, these are great lines. However, the way he delivers them and just his, how his voice carries it and his mannerisms, his facial expressions, obviously, like Jeffrey Combs kills it every time.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's the 40th anniversary coming up for part one, or it's already happened. And a lot of my friends got to see them in LA because all three of them were there with Barbara Crampton, who sadly, unfortunately, did not return to this one. And I know. I do love him, and I do love the character. I thought that was probably the most powerful speech in the film, because after that, even though it's batshit crazy,
yeah,
it is so sad. Like, I was getting so upset. And so I know we'll talk about that when we get to it, but I just think that I think it was a really good precursor, because for a movie that doesn't seem to take itself very seriously, that was a very serious moment.
Yeah, no, it was a very serious moment. And for like, I'm sure you've seen Bride of Frankenstein.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
I have her on my arm.
Okay, yes. So he's like the Dr. Pretorius to like the Bride of Frankenstein to the Bride of Reanimator. I mean, he makes some other really important comments too about like the iguana. So I wasn't sure why the hell he took that iguana with him from Peru whenever they were in the war zone. And he took it with him back. And it didn't really make any sense at that point that he was like so attached to this iguana, but then it made more sense later whenever he kind of suffocated it with that gas that made it like it simulated a heart attack. And like because he wanted to have the least amount of tissue damage. And then he took the fluid, the amniotic fluid out of the sac. And he was commenting about how the iguana hasn't changed or it hasn't had any significant changes in its biology for like, he said 100 million years, but I looked it up because I was like, has it been 100 million years? And it's like, no, it's been like 10 million years, but still, like it is like reptiles have changed very little in a very long amount of time.
Yeah, there's a lot to the film, and I wonder because I did not read H.P. Lovecraft's novel.
Me neither.
It's Herbert West Reanimator, right? So I wonder how much of this is taken from the novel, the source material. I wonder how much is taken from, just actual fact, or is just somebody, just spit and shit they remembered from school. I don't know. So not to say that that wouldn't be true, but
Yeah.
there was a lot to this one. I thought that kind of, I don't know if it expanded on Reanimator, but the whole thing with a lot more going on with the animals in this one than its predecessor, because I think I want to say it was just the cat that he killed, right? So
Yeah.
okay. And now we have the cat, and the dog died, not of his fault. And, so if you're one of those that, spoiler, the dog does die. So, just remember, that was so sad. I mean, he comes back, so I don't know if that matters, but,
he dies in the most brutal way too. Like the cop is swinging him around and then his leg comes off. Like that, it was just so silly the way that that whole scene played out. It was very funny.
Yeah, and you can clearly tell it's a stuffed animal, so it's not like it was really that upset. I mean, it was still upsetting for me because anytime a dog dies, I'm upset. But like when he's carrying her on the arm, then he puts the arm in his mouth to go with the nose. What is going on? It's so stupid, but it was good. And and that's what I think. I love a good horror comedy because I've never watched this one all the way through. I've always seen the beginning and I've never seen it all the way through. And then when you wanted to do it, I was like, what, actually, let's do that because now I have an excuse to watch it.
Kind of on the creationism versus evolution theme within the movie, I thought it was really hilarious when Wes says, "My God, they're using tools." Like his zombies that he created are like getting smarter, they're evolving. So I thought that was a really funny comment. And then when he says, well, when all the creatures that he's made are like starting to come out of the wall, and he like scolds them like they're his children. He's like, can't remember exactly what he says, but he's like, "What are you doing? Get back in there," type of thing. It was really funny.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because it's the same sort of, I guess, an opposite tone of what Victor Frankenstein would do, right? Because Victor runs away from his creation, and then we have West sort of trying to harness them and get them in line, which I find funny. And the only one that really seems to not have, which I find hilarious, to not have any kind of like super brain damage is the head, right? What's his name? Why can't I think of his name? And so
Hill.
Yeah, Dr. Hill. And so, but he's the only one who still seems to sort of have his faculties or his wits about him. Like he's not as delayed, I think, as the rest of them, which I find interesting. So
I think it's because he was supposed to be a doctor. He's supposed to have this like extraordinary intelligence, right? So unlike the average person that would become reanimated, he had these psychic powers in the first one that kind of went into the second one as well. I don't think they did enough with him in this movie. In the end, he appears a lot more, but when he kind of shows up in the beginning and then throughout like the first probably hour of the film, you're like, what is happening with Dr. Hill? Why is he here? What is he doing?
Well, supposedly they were supposed to have scenes with him in the sideshow, right? And like, get it. What does he say? Get a job in a sideshow.
Yeah.
And they filmed, and I know they filmed it because I was looking at that, but they never used it. So
Yeah.
and Brian Yuzna even says, there's a lot that he wished he would have done differently because they did a whole segment on this film on the In Search of Darkness, 1990 to 1994. So if you have not seen that one yet, I would definitely highly recommend renting it because it is so good and there's so many great movies on there, and this being one of them. And
I'm glad that they did this plot though, because it makes so much sense with it being a parody of Frankenstein to do Bride of Frankenstein next, I think. And I'm glad that they did it because just the ending sequence of this movie alone is worth the whole watch because it's so insane.
Yeah, exactly.
So the next little theme I had in here was the hubris of science. Like Herbert West's obsession with reanimation pushes him beyond any ethical boundaries. He really doesn't care about life or death. He cares about controlling it. But he doesn't care if someone lives or actually dies. And, his emphasis on tissue damage. So, and how fresh a corpse is always, it always kind of like makes me laugh when he makes those remarks.
I feel like there are glimpses of normalcy and glimpses of, him trying to be empathetic. But at the end of the day, what does he care about most is what he can create, right? So I don't know. I think that falls under the more of the hubris as well, because he doesn't seem to care when Kathleen Kinmont dies. What's her name in the movie? I don't know. The bride.
Yeah. I don't even think they give her a name because I remember her in the hospital. He was like, you remind me of Meg. And then as soon as he said that, that's like right when she dies, which is, kind of parallel to his real Meg. And it shows like that's one of the other themes that I had in here was grief and moving on. Like Dan is obviously not over Meg. He accepts all kinds of things that I don't think he would normally just because he wants to bring Meg back or at least her heart back.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that at least I kind of feel that's probably why he stayed close with Wes as well, because he can't seem to let her go.
Yeah.
And as a result, I feel that's a result of how heartbreaking the ending of this film is, because it really I was crying and I'm like, this is a lot. And I think it's the same sort of heartbreak you feel, which they wanted to emulate with Bride of Frankenstein, right? Like the juxtaposition of both films. At the end of the day, it's not a happy ending. And so even though this is considered, somewhat of a comedy or dark comedy or horror comedy, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
The ending is not a fun ending. So just anyways. So yeah, moving on. And I don't think to piggyback on what you said, West also can't move on. And he can't accept anything either because he can't accept his work not working.
Yeah, he can't accept failure. He has to keep moving on, moving forward and trying to improve, do better. I did find it interesting, the juxtaposition between like Bride of Frankenstein and Bride of Reanimator. They both had emphasis on the heart. So the heart was the reason why they couldn't get the bride to to come alive. I guess they call it reanimate too. And so he like sends out his henchmen to go get a fresh heart, like as if an accident always happens.
Yeah, I did notice that about the heart. And I thought it was interesting because I was just thinking as you're saying that, I wonder if it was a man. And I feel like they do this with Frankenstein as well, that there's like an emphasis on the brain, right? Whereas women, they have this inherent thought that, it needs to be internal and more emotional, right? And I roll my
Yeah.
eyes. I know people can't see me, but my eyes are rolling. So I'm when it's also, there's a lot of feminist themes in this as well. I don't know if you have this on here. Um, because she is a woman, because men are bringing them back, right? And men are the creators, God is a man, and
Mm-hmm.
came first, and all that bullshit. So
Yeah.
I don't, sorry, not bullshit. It's a story.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're good. I'm an atheist, so you're not going to offend
I'm,
me.
I'm like, just in case. So, but yeah, no, I think that's really sad. And I don't think it's just Dan who is grieving. I think when they reanimate our bride, her heart is broken.
Hmm.
And it's the same, and it's the kind of the same feeling you get when you read Frankenstein, and he abandons his creature and the creature's feelings throughout, just feeling, you made me. And then, 'cause she keeps saying that, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. You made me, but you don't want me because you don't want my body. And he says to her, I just don't want your body. And I'm
Hmm.
like, what the fuck? I was like,
Yeah. I mean, so we can totally go to the whole theme of just like social rejection. And even so, Dan is really brutal to her whenever he finally like gets out of that trance. Like Francesca goes to him and she's like, "Who is this?" And
mhm,
he's like, "It's Meg." And she tells him, like, "That's not Meg. Meg is dead." And that like, I don't know, like breaks his trance and he kind of comes back to reality in that moment. And then that's when he starts rejecting this bride that he created. And he wanted to, like, he made a point to be the one that actually injected her and
mhm.
everything. Um, and yeah, he's pushing her away. It's really sad. And she just keeps wanting to know why, what am I here for? Why did you make me?
Yeah.
And he never has a good reason. He never tells her. She just ends up her body tissue rejection, right?
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And inherently she destroys herself, right?
I will tell you, Francesca pissed me off too
Yeah.
when it came to her dog. She did not give a shit. Like she stayed there. This guy just murdered your dog, and you're just going to hang out. You're going to spend the night in the house where your dog was murdered. Like, and then she saw that they were doing fucked up shit. She was just, I don't know. It was that whole like, I have a theme in there like called Love is Blind. So,
Yeah. Let's
but
go to that. Yeah.
yeah, let's
Okay.
go to that theme.
Because we need to talk about her because I had some issues with her. So,
Yeah, me too. I did too. It was like, are you a strong, independent woman, or are you just like, I don't know what the fuck you are? Like, yeah.
and
So
then,
you tell me your take first.
so as a woman, okay, and I don't take this the wrong way or me being shallow kind of person. If I walked into that hovel he lived in and saw how he lived, I'm not
No.
having sex with anybody in that house. I'm sorry. Now you can come to my
The
place,
couch had all kinds of rips.
get blood on his shoes.
Yeah.
Girl, he had blood on his shoes. Like, I'm sorry, but no, this is not college. This is not, we're all just fucking around and everybody's kind of grimy, right? When you're 18,
Yeah.
19 years old. Like, no, we're grown adults. He's
Hmm.
a doctor and look where he's
Right. Yes.
living. Look where he's
Exactly.
living.
I would expect like you're going to visit your doctor boyfriend or like your love interest that's a doctor. I would be so like I would have turned around at those doorsteps. Seeing how close, like I like cemeteries, but I'm sorry, you're living on top of a cemetery? No, thank you.
And even, okay, the cemetery is not the problem. It's just, well, yeah, that would have been a little weird. But at the end of the day, she has her own place. Like, why would you just invite him over? Why are you going to?
Yeah.
And then even after all that, She's like, I'm gonna cook for you in your nasty house. Okay, that's nice. And then I'm gonna sleep with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then well, I brought my dog for some reason. So she
Yeah.
knew she was gonna stay the night. What a bitch.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, and which is fine. I don't care. Like, yeah, I would totally like he's cute. Yeah, and he's a doctor. I would totally hook up with him, but not in the house. Like
The next morning when she wakes up and she hears her dog, I will just leave it there and tell me what you think about that scene.
well, I mean, I don't think so. I know this is like the plot, right? So she has to hear the dog and she falls asleep on the couch with Dan. Oh my God. Like at that point, I would have left.
Yep,
I would have gone
me
home
too.
or taken him with me and then just gone. And so I just don't think and Francesca the entire time she just doesn't have the I don't know if it's intentional that she's supposed to be the quote dumb blonde, but like she's very pretty. She's got prospects. Like there's no issues for her to just move on.
Hmm.
And with the cop on her ass about him and everything, you would think that she would think twice. Her instinct to stay alive is just not there until I mean she can't even fight the bride at this point. And the only thing she's worried about is Dan. And Dan is not, for those of you who haven't seen it or, haven't seen Reanimator in a while, Dan is not the same character he was in part one. He's a broken
No.
man. He's callous. He has one track mind, and Wes knows that. Oh, I have Meg's heart. I'm going to make sure I use that to my advantage to keep Dan around because I need help. And
Hmm.
Dan just goes for it instead of being like, okay, fuck you, I gotta go. And I just think that that plays a role in his inability to feel empathy even for Francesca, because yes, what is the one thing he say to her when they wake up in the morning or when he's sleeping with her? How beautiful she is, right? That's his comment.
Yeah, and doesn't he say something about how soft her skin is and stuff? He makes some weird comments about her skin.
Yeah, and I think it's more of him kind of internalizing and maybe in the back of his mind thinking, what if we used her body for Meg's heart?
Yeah, right. It's
Yeah.
almost like that's the whole emphasis on the body parts and how they're reanimating body parts. And um, when Dan says, like, especially that little creature with all the fingers and then the eye,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, "What are you doing here? Like, we're not trying to bring back, just random body parts. We're trying to bring back people." And Wes says, "Well, what are people?" aside from a collection of body parts. So,
Yeah. And for West to say that that's on point for him because I don't think West has the ability to view life the way we view life like other people would. And so the love is blind aspect I think it goes for Francesca personally, I think, because
mhm.
she sees all this bullshit and she doesn't care.
Yeah. Like even after, so the next day, she, wakes up, she hears her dog, she goes downstairs, and then her dog like grabs her with a hand, with a human hand. Like, and
So great.
then she's still like, at least she runs out then. But the fact that she comes back after that, what the
She needs
fuck?
to save him. She has to save him. And why? But why? What are we saving? What your dog is dead.
Mhm.
He, didn't even clean up for you, knowing you're coming over. Like, come on now. Girl, these are red flags. It's like, we say, okay, how many red flags does it take? Because, sometimes the guy's just so cute. But at this point,
Yeah. Oh, so two more things I want to mention really quick that I noticed that she like kind of endured and she still stuck around was like the fucking nub in her mouth. The nub,
mm,
like the
oh
cop's
my
nub.
God.
She still goes back to the house when she gets the nub in her mouth. It's so disgusting.
When that when that happened, that's when my boyfriend walks in and he's like, Ew, because he hates all the shit I watch, and he walks out. And I'm like, I'm like, are
It's
you
so
surprised?
nasty. It's
And-
so gross.
but it's a violation, though, right? This is like a total metaphor of a male violating a woman, right, and
Hmm.
penetrating her in some way,
Yes.
and that is the. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know what would be worse, having a bloody stump in my mouth, or you know what I mean? It's like, oh, what the fuck? Like, I don't know. So.
It was really grotesque. I'm just like, what the actual hell? Um, and uh, I was just like baffled whenever she like went to go check on him in the hospital and Dan had left because the patient died. And the nurse tells her, Francesca, well, he left because he was really distraught. His patient died. I've never known a doctor who cares so much. And Francesca's just like, oh, yes, he does. He does care so much. It's like, no, bitch. You saw all the mad science he was doing in his house. Like, how are you still convinced that this guy is good?
Like I kind of got mad when she started fighting with our bride too,
Hmm.
because she she took Dan's side, and as a woman, me seeing what they did to her,
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Oh girl, we gotta go. Fuck these guys." Like I would be like, "Let's go. You can come live with me."
Well, I guess just like all the body horror. I just wanted to talk about all the creatures that West was making. I feel like in this movie, he kind of loses his purpose a little bit when it comes to the science part. He's kind of like in a pigeonhole with it. And he just starts making all these creatures out of boredom almost. Like whenever he puts the hand and the foot together, and
Hmm.
he just like he looks at body parts and he's like, oh, he's like a kid that's like, oh, I could put those together.
Yeah. And especially a lot of the effects and a lot of the some of the creatures, I guess you want to say, or
Hmm.
zombies, or whatever you want to call them. Screaming Mad George was responsible for creating a lot of them.
Hmm.
And of course, Brian Yuzna, the king of body horror over here. And him doing effects from Reanimator, directing this one, I felt so many homage to society here with
Hmm.
these. And so again, is this the source material, or is this something that we want to see? The body horror for me was the best, because
Hmm.
just seeing all these creatures, Reanimator touches on it, and then we get Bride of Reanimator, and we just get everything thrown at us. And I
Yeah.
think yes, it plays the theme that West is just completely unhinged at the point where he's bored. He knows he can do this. He wants to see what it does. But yeah, so with the body horror, I think that was a great touch. And I also think that, looking at it from the character's point of view, that West was is being West. Like, this is, he can do it. Why not? You
Hmm.
know?
Yeah. Um, like I felt like the emphasis on this movie was less on the storyline and more on the gore and the special effects and the practicals and all of that. And it's worth it just for that. Like the little
Mm-hmm.
hand thing, I felt so bad for it when it got squished by the
Mm-hmm.
book. I was like, oh, they
Yeah,
killed the thing.
and you're supposed to feel badly though, right? I mean, for me, reading Frankenstein and just with all of these elements of creating something that you ultimately hate because you don't like how it looks, even though you
Hmm.
created it,
Yeah.
it's just so heartbreaking. And
Yeah.
I think we're meant to feel empathy for these reanimated, like they're not objects. I mean, body parts, I should say. And
Hmm.
then once we get to the piece de resistance behind me with the bride and everything that she has to endure,
Hmm.
and I feel like all of these body parts, all these things, they do feel pain, and they are sentient, right? So it's
Hmm.
just, I don't even know. Like, I don't even know what to say about that, which the underlying theme of that is much darker than what the movie portrays, I think. And so if we're looking at it at face value, we can have fun with this. But if
Yeah.
you're actually thinking about it, it's not so fun.
Well, yeah, and I mean it feeds into the queer coding and just like the it is a it's almost like it's speaking on societal norms and what we accept and what we reject as a society. And that message is still prevalent today with the way that trans people are being treated right now and all that like legislation happening that's taking away rights for all kinds of people who are disenfranchised anyway. So
Mhm.
the I find the message of this movie and the rejection, it's a really important one.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's a heartbreaking one. So like I highly recommend getting to the end of this one. And
Hmm.
but I don't think a lot of people are going to be happy with the ending as far as the tone goes, but the effects are amazing. And like I said,
Yeah.
Screaming Mad Georgia alone letting himself to such a you know we don't know what was going to happen with this one. Like we had to pump this one out. We had to get it going. It was expected to happen. And we go from Stuart Gordon to Brian Yesna now. And it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And the fact, I know you want to talk about this before we don't have a lot of time, but maybe we should move on
Mhm.
to the juxtaposition between the fact that we don't see the titular title of title character until like the last, and there's my daughter the titular title character until the last like what 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
and, and
Mhm.
and I know for a fact Brian Yesna was very upset that we didn't have more time with her.
Mhm.
And plus what Kathleen Kinmont has to go through in order to create the suit that she's wearing, and in and of itself is a little fucked up, what
Yeah.
happens to her creating this. And just not being able to see everything she can do. And
Hmm.
what she does do is just amazing. And so it's like, well, because even it like, so we see her a little bit dying in the beginning, but even like with Bride of Frankenstein, I know that Elsa Lanchester, she's playing Mary Shelley at the beginning. So
Yeah.
we get to have some time with the actress, but we
Hmm.
don't really have time with the bride. And like, I find that such a disservice, but at the same time, it's so poetic because
Hmm.
we're only here for a fleeting moment and then we're gone. And so I don't know. I don't know how you felt about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I liked that she was only there for, I mean, I would have liked for her to be in there more. Don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong. But because we're comparing it to, this is a direct parallel to like Bride of Frankenstein. The bride only shows up for like 5 minutes too. So it would have been weird for me to see the bride for longer, um,
Mm-hmm.
just because of that. And I feel when it comes to the bride, it's what she symbolizes, not who she actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting too that you bring up what the actress for the Bride of Reanimator, what she went through, because when I was doing the research for Bride of Frankenstein, she also went through hell, like with all the body wrappings and everything, and like she had to be fed through like a straw, and just the amount of shit that we put these women through is insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to get a little screen time
Hmm. Yeah.
with them. And it's just and I don't think and I think it's still the same today that women just don't have the I don't think there's anyone looking out for women on set.
Hmm.
And it's almost like mimics it on screen. No one's looking out for her when she awakens. And look what happens. So,
Yeah. Yeah, they all turn their back on her. And what does Wes say? He says she's just a collection of discarded parts,
hmm,
I think is
yeah,
what he says, which is so so poignant. How do you say that word?
poignant.
Poignant, so poignant. Like, yeah, to men, a lot of us women are just a bunch of parts.
Hmm.
We're just a
We're
collection of parts.
we're just the body that they want. And I also found another theme too is that especially with women, and you could probably speak to this more because you have children. I don't have any, and I don't plan to, but I think that like it's so easy for men to just dismiss you once they've lost their attraction to you, right?
Mhm.
And with women, that happens a lot. We feel, when our bodies are changing and we don't feel the same anymore. And like, how's our partner going to perceive us? And right away,
Mhm.
Dan says to her, I don't want your body. And I think that sort of, as a woman, that just like ingrains in you because you always have that fear that if you change, and our bodies are the ones that are going to change the most. Not that men don't gain weight, but nobody seems to give a fuck what they do.
Yeah.
But like our bodies will change, and we change because we have to. We're having children, we're giving birth, and everything is just different.
Mhm.
And you know, so many women are just rejected, for
Yeah.
someone else, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, this is all you wanted me for, and this is all the value that I give to you, right? And that's
Yeah.
why I think her holding the heart is such a
Mhm.
like a powerful image because, you know, this is what you should want.
Yeah.
You should want my heart, but you
Yeah.
don't. So don't
Yeah.
destroy
Or
it.
like you have my heart and you're breaking my heart because you're an
Mm-hmm.
asshole.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So
um,
fuck Dan. Moral of the story.
yeah, fuck Dan. I think we pretty much covered all the themes at this point. I do have a little segment. It's called Caption That. And so I have some pictures and I just want you to tell me kind of like what would you call this picture? What would you caption this picture? What comes to mind? And I can tell you what I thought. And it's all the creatures from the ending. So like, yeah. If you had
Oh
to
my God.
post this creature, what would you say about it? In like two, three, like 5 words at most.
Okay.
Do you understand the rules?
Yeah, I sort of do. I guess I want to say picture because I'm being this creative on the fly is getting me nervous now.
I'm sorry. It's okay. It's all right. I promise. Okay. Do you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we've got caption that Bride of Reanimator version. Okay. What would you caption this one?
Like, I didn't know it looked like that.
Yeah. What he looks like. He's like the thing
Well,
almost.
no, he's saying that.
Oh, I
Like
didn't know
he's
you looked like that.
shocked.
Oh, okay. I called it I finger you.
That's cute. That's a little eyeball.
His little
Mm.
eyeball. And he's got fingers.
Oh my God, this is the doggy.
It's the dog. I'm sorry. I put the dog in there.
Ah. Like, no, I don't want to go to the vet.
Yeah, no, I don't want to go to the vet. What did I say about this one? I think I said like give me a hand, like with guarding the house or something. I don't know. I have to look it
Oh.
up later. But yeah, it's sad. I'll go past this picture. All right. What would you caption this?
I feel like it looks like what's his name from The Cure. I don't know. I might look like I have to take a shit, but I don't have an ass. I don't know.
I called
I,
it Batman because he's a man with bat
with
wings.
bat wings,
So now
yeah.
he's like the official Batman or like Bat Head.
Yeah. But I kind of like the guy in the back a little bit more. Like I feel like his reaction to the bat head would be more fun. He kind of looks like
Yeah,
Leatherface, doesn't he?
he kind of does look like Leatherface. He really does. All right, so he comes up later. I think, okay, this one's really hard to see because I
I
had to do
cannot see
screen
that.
grabs. Okay, it's screen grabs. I'm going to explain the picture. It's the woman and the man that are like, they don't have legs, it's arms, and they're moving around. Do you remember that creature when it shows up?
Yes, I do, but
It's so hard to see. I
it
know.
is, yeah.
Um, I called this one heads or tails.
Oh my God, that's funny. I like that. Yeah, I don't know what I would say about that one. Well,
It
I'm
reminded
surprised.
me of this creature specifically reminds me of like cat dog.
Yeah, I was about to say something about cat talk too, but I was like, let's keep the Nickelodeon references to the because like for some reason I was thinking of Stick Stickly with the finger eye. But maybe like Hands Across America. This is what it really looks like. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, next one is so Leatherface. Basically, what would you say about this one?
This was a character, remember in Nickelodeon with the foot. And I
That
can't
was
remember
a
what it was called.
character.
Like you're just a foot face. I don't know.
Yeah, a foot face. I called him a dumb stick, kind of like because he kind of reminded me of a drumstick.
Oh yeah, he does. Yeah. He's
So I
with
said dumb stick.
his little toes. Screaming Mad
Yeah.
George, I believe, I think created that one. So yay.
I wonder if Nickelodeon was like an inspiration for these creatures because they really do look like a lot of Nickelodeon creatures.
Well, I think maybe like, Nickelodeon could have taken it from them, that's for sure. Because we had some
True.
questionable people on staff. So
That is very true. All right, this guy.
so the butt face guy, this is the guy who looks like the character from, or well, we'll call him butt face. But it looks like the
Face.
character from Society, right?
Yeah, I really love the boob over the shoulder.
Mm.
So that's like a boob over
Like he looks like
there.
he's being birthed, kind of. I don't know.
He does. It's it's very strange. This
Like
is a
this
very
actor had
strange
too much
creature.
fun.
Yeah, he did. Because then he's like crawling all over West at the end, which is it's awkward, very awkward. All right, this one. Do you remember this one?
Oh, they're doing the Macarena. How cute.
You remember when it like turns around though?
Yeah. And they're like right there. Yeah.
It's so creepy.
It's a good scene, but that picture is pretty funny.
Yeah,
And she kind of looks like a Cenobite there.
she
Right?
does. Actually,
Yeah.
this one really reminded me of Hellraiser.
Mm-hmm.
I called this one I've Got Your Back
Oh, that's cute. I like that.
because they're connected by their backs.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Oh my gosh.
So he's the front, she's the back. Is very interesting creature. I think that was it. That was
Oh,
all my
yes.
creatures.
Yay. We did it.
What else did
That
I
was fun.
call? I feel like I had a better, I want to see what I called them in my notes. Oh, good boy or welcome dog. I called him good boy.
Oh, like no. That's what I
Yeah,
was thinking. I was like, no.
he just looks like such a good boy standing next to him. Like it could be his pet.
Oh, bless his heart.
Hmm. If he didn't reject him.
I know. Yeah.
I think we had a lot of really great feminist conversation. It's why I love talking to women about horror.
I never have
Like,
a girl to talk to, so thank you.
yes, no, I'll like talk to men about horror, and I'm just like, I know in one of my episodes I was talking to my husband, and he's like saying some shit, and I was like, I need to talk to more women. All right,
All right. Well, thank
bye.
you.
Of
Bye.
course, thanks, bye.
I have taken refuse of your God's failures, and I have triumphed. There is my creation.
Now it's time for the horror of it all. I don't want to beat you to death with the facts of Frankenstein, so in this episode, I will tell you a love story that never was. One where grief over what could have been takes control, and one that's comparable to our groom Dan and his undead bride in Reanimator. So we've got The Doctor Who Lived with a Corpse. This took place in Key West, Florida in the 1940s. So Dr. Carol von Cosel had plenty of patients in Key West, but none meant more to him than Elena del Hoyos. When her health deteriorated, he told her family he would always take care of her. Key West has always been home to some of America's most eccentric It's a place that's far removed from the mainland of America that serves as sort of a last outpost for writers, dreamers, musicians, and weirdos. But in 1940, news spread around the island that something very strange was taking place in Dr. von Cosse's local laboratory, and when details about what he was doing got out, people were shocked that the doctor was living with a corpse. But why? Why live with the stench of death? Maria Elena is our victim here. Maria Elena had a bit of a tragic life. Soon after she was married, she had a miscarriage, and her husband abandoned her. To make matters worse, Maria Elena also contracted tuberculosis, a typically fatal disease at the time. She sought treatment at the United States Marine Hospital in Key West, and that's when her story takes a very strange turn. While at the hospital, she gave a German doctor named Karl Tanzler, or as he liked to refer to himself, Karl von Cose. Little is known about his true background because his invented one was so confusing and changed often. We do know that he immigrated to the United States in 1926 via Cuba. In 1927, he took a job in the United States Marine Hospital using the name Karl von Cose. It was at the hospital that he met Elena Hoyos, and he immediately fell in love with her. He later claimed that as a child, he was visited by visions of a dead ancestor, Countess Anna Constantia von Cose, who revealed to him the face of his true love, an exotic, dark-haired woman. He was convinced the vision had been of Elena. He attempted to cure her with a variety of medications and procedures. He showered her with gifts of jewelry and clothing and professed his love to her. There's nothing to say that Elena ever reciprocated his affections. Despite Tanzler's best efforts, Elena died from tuberculosis at her parents' home on October 25, 1931. Tanzler paid for her funeral, and with the permission of her family, he then commissioned the construction of an above-ground mausoleum in the Key West Cemetery, which he visited almost every night. He later stated that Elena's spirit appeared to him when he sat next to her tomb and serenaded him with her favorite song. One night in April 1933, Tanzler crept into the cemetery and removed Elena's body from the mausoleum, carting it out of the graveyard in a toy wagon. He took her home with him, and that's when things got weirder. Tanzler wired Elena's bones together with wire and coat hangers and fitted her face with glass eyes. As her skin began to decompose, he replaced it with silk cloth that had been soaked in wax and plaster. When her hair fell out, he fashioned a wig from hair that had been given to him by Elena's mother. Soon after her funeral in 1931, he filled her cadaver with rags so that she could keep her original form, and he dressed her in her own clothing, stockings, jewelry, and gloves. Tanzler also used copious amounts of perfume, disinfectants, and preserving agents to mask the odor and slow the decomposition of the body. He had to do so because he kept Elena's body in his bed. In October 1940, Elena's sister, Florinda, heard rumors of Tanzler sleeping with the disinterred body of her sister and confronted Tanzler at his home, where Elena's body was discovered. Tanzler was arrested and detained for desecrating Elena's tomb. Stealing her corpse was not illegal at the time, so Tanzler was examined by psychiatrists, but they found him mentally competent to stand trial. After a preliminary hearing, though, the charges had been dismissed because of that whole, like, not quite illegal yet. After being used as an exhibit at a funeral home, so they didn't stop abusing Elena's corpse. They then made her an exhibit. So Elena's corpse was eventually returned to Key West Cemetery and was reburied in an unmarked grave in a secret location to prevent any further tampering. He never got over his obsession with Elena Hoyos. He created a death mask of her as the basis of a life-sized dummy, which he kept in his bed until his death on July 3rd, 1952. According to his obituary, he died on the floor of his home. It was noted, though, that overlooking his corpse was a waxen image wrapped in silken cloth and rope. Let's end on a high note. If you would like to collaborate on something, I would love the opportunity to connect with more people in the horror scene. This past weekend, I went to MegaCon in Orlando, and I met some really great people in the indie horror scene. I saw a screening of the new movie Screamboat. It was the second showing they did, and I'm so happy to have been part of the film's history in some minuscule way. I got to meet director Stephen Lamort, super nice guy and very funny, and Amy Schumacher. I believe she has a co-production credit as well. I couldn't find it online, but said that to me in person. She plays the EMT Amber on the ferry. David Howard Thornton plays the murderous mouse, and his performance is just as hilarious and gruesome as you could hope for. His ability to emote with his body and interject comedy into his roles is always award-winning material. I will be making a formal review of this film on my social media accounts, so be on the lookout for that. No spoilers on this one, just gushing all over it with whatever fluids come out. So I started shouting out people that left reviews and comments and things like that on the different platforms. So I have a few that I picked for this week. This one was on Apple Podcast. It was by Crypto Movies 77. So thank you, Crypto Movies 77, for leaving me a 5-star review. It says, loving this podcast. Keep up the great work you're doing with it. Love the combination of horror movie walkthroughs and the true crime of it all. Keep the episodes coming. Thank you. I'm really glad that you get what I'm doing and you appreciate all the different parts, because that is something, like, I'm not sure if everyone likes that I do the synopsis, the horror talk, and then the horror true crime connection. So on Spotify, my mom commented, put together with so much detail. Thank you, Mom, for always commenting on my videos. It really helps push the algorithm gods in my direction. So yes, please continue to do that on every episode because it matters. And also thanks, Madre, because I put it together with my OCD. On Blue Sky, Auntie had commented to me, discovered your podcast on here, listened to a few episodes at work today. I love it. You're off to a really good start. Reanimator and Bride of Frankenstein are 2 of my faves. So thank you so much for commenting and letting me know what episode you like the best too, because it kind of gives me an idea of like what people want. For everyone that is downloading, liking, subscribing, and commenting on the podcast through whatever platform you choose, thank you for your support. I'm nothing without you, and in the words of Maxine, I will not accept a life I do not deserve. Keep those comments, likes, and reviews coming. I will be shouting people out each week. I've also decided to do a monthly gift basket based on my theme of the month. I will announce the winner at the end of the month, and the winner will be picked by printing out all of the reviews I get for that month, sticking them to the wall, and literally throwing darts at them. So if you want to see that on video and win prizes, I need your support in the way of those actions I mentioned moments ago. This is a weekly podcast with new episodes out every Thursday. All the research, writing, and audio is done by yours truly. This is a one-woman show, and I am doing my very best. I have a monthly horror event at Conduit in Orlando, Florida. You can find me on Instagram at Scream Queen Podcaster, Blue Sky at Scream Queen Podcast, TikTok at Scream Queen Podcast, and there's Linktree that will take you to all the other places like YouTube and all the sites. I can be found on pretty much all platforms, but I'm going to be most active on Instagram and Blue Sky. If you can't find me, I don't know how you're listening to this right now. Just the fact that you're like a listener right now, you can find me. You found me. So find me again, okay? Thanks. Please don't gamble with my heart. Until next time, goodbye.